This week I want to talk about how we name things, names that mean something important. In the picture, that's a Nittany lion. But what is a Nittany lion? Well, I don't know. So the problem is common names, the things that we call things every day, vary from area to area, from person to person. And if you grow up in an area where everybody has the same understanding, so in a localized area in West Perry School District, it's usually not a problem. And up until about 500 years ago, everyone grew up in the same place they lived their entire life. People didn't travel more than a mile or two from where they grew up. And so everyone knew the same context, and it really wasn't an issue. But as people started to move around, as we began to experience globalization through the form of colonization from European powers, people were introduced to new organisms. And so the other issue was there were multiple languages being spoken, and so confusion over the translations made it very confusing. And so if you had something like a lion that's living in Pennsylvania and you call it a mountain lion, a Nittany lion, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, except if it's an herbal plant that's supposed to be taken as a medication and you pick the wrong plant, Solomon seal, but it's not actually Solomon seal, it's false Solomon seal, that could be an issue. People could die. And so this became a problem as people were introduced to new organisms. And by the middle of the 1600s, most people realized there needed to be some kind of standard in the system. So scientific names are the same worldwide. The system we use right now was developed by a guy named Carl von Linné, Swedish guy. He wrote in Latin under the name Carolus Linnaeus. He invented this system called binomial nomenclature. That term has nom in there twice. Nom means name. So two-name naming system. Clature comes from the same root as clan, connected group. So two-name name system. And so every species gets two names, and this is very much like we have with humans, where we know people by two names. And so the first name in this system is a general name, a genus name, a generic name, and there are several types of organisms in it. This would actually be like your family name, where there might be several people in your house that have the same name, and they are connected to each other, but they're different. The second name in the system is not capitalized, and it's a specific species name, only one type of organism. And he used Latin because every Latin word has only one meaning, but also Latin was the language of academics at the time, so every academic spoke Latin worldwide, and so universities were taught in Latin. He wrote in Latin. Each species today is recognized as a group of organisms which can produce fertile offspring, which means that they can have babies, they can have babies. This is open to debate, as we're going to see in just a moment. And so what we call a species is a group of organisms, all of the organisms in a location that can have babies together. So the species is the most narrow classification, just one type of animal, like Felis domesticus, this thing. So Felis domesticus, Felis means cat, and domestic means house, and so this is a house cat. So then this system works by organizing species. So species is the only thing that actually exists in nature. It's a real detectable, observable, testable level of organization. Species is the only thing in this entire discussion that's real. The rest of this is just created for human convenience. So groups of species are organized with others that are similar to them. And at every level of organization where we group things together, there's a standard defining that level. And this is some arbitrary thing. The word arbitrary means negotiable, isn't fixed or set. So we could pick the color, the size, the reproduction, the life cycle, etc. So for example, all purple flowers on the planet could be put together in one group under this system. Is that done? No, but could it be? Yes. So everything in the group fits the standard description. So other cats that are very similar to Felis domesticus are placed in the same genus, genus Felis. Remember, the generic name is a general one that there's several organisms like. So Felis has multiple species in it, but Felis domesticus is just one kind of cat. So a house cat is fairly small, has certain characteristics, and so things like mountain lions, Nittany lions, real lions, tigers, bobcats, they're very different than house cats. So the only other cats in Felis would be things like house cats. And there are actually some of these in the wild. Felis beati, the Chinese desert cat, there on the left. Felis caeus, the jungle cat, on the right. Felis margarita, the sand cat. Felis nigripes, the black-footed cat. And Felis sylvestris, the African Eurasian wild cat, which is believed to be the ancestor of the modern domestic house cat. And sylvestris means forest, as in like Pennsylvania. So that literally means forest cat, Felis sylvestris. And notice the writing there. The genus name is just a capital letter with a period. Some of you do this. You write your first name, which is your specific name, and then you write your generic name, your family name, with just one capital letter and a period. So it's very similar, except they're reversed in order. And so back to Sylvestris, some of you who are cartoon buffs may recall there's a cat in cartoons called Sylvester, and the reason for that was because at the time, domestic house cats were called Felis sylvestris subspecies domesticus. Now they're called a separate species. Are they interfertile? Actually, all 5 of these cats are interfertile with house cats. So are they really separate species? Probably not. They're just geographic isolations of the gene pool. And this is what I mean by open for debate. Even though these cats are interfertile, because they don't breed freely in the wild, we call them separate species. So if we have a genus and we put it together with another genus, those genera, that's the plural, are organized into families. Again, there is a standard that defines the group, and so all cats are in the family Felidae. We're going to look at the taxonomy of the cat family. You don't need to know this, but we're just going to breeze through it for illustration. And so, what's a cat? Retractable claws, of course it's a mammal, which is a larger grouping above it. And so these are the things that cats have in common. And actually, if you look up a paper that was published by G. Fisher in 1817, you will find the definition of family Felidae. So that's what that reference is. That's the person who identified this standard character, which describes this whole family. And you can look that paper up. You can go to scholar.google.com and you probably can find that specific paper. So there's actually a couple subfamilies in the cat family. This isn't a specific identified taxonomic distribution. So each one of these groups is called a taxon. A taxon is a group. So subfamily isn't a necessary taxon, but you can have a sub of any of the taxa. Taxa is the plural of taxon. And together the entire system is called taxonomy. And so the cheetah, Acinonyx jubatus, is in a subfamily all by itself because it is so different than all the rest of the cats. And if you want to know why, you can look up information on cats and cheetahs, and you'll find lots of different characteristics of them and the rest of the subfamily of cats. And so here we see the different genera in that subfamily. There's Felis, and this is only specifically the wild cats of the world, and so Felis domesticus is not in that group. And we go through and we see all of these others. There's a lynx. We have lynx in Perry County. The lynx rufus. Rufus means red. So the red lynx is the bobcat that exists in this area. And lots of other cats there. And also there's puma, genus puma. Puma concolor, which Linnaeus named it concolor. It means multiple colors. Called the puma, the cougar, the mountain lion, the Nittany lion is a puma concolor. All of those words describe the same cat. And this is part of the problem with this whole system of common names, is that there's lots of common names for the same organism. And so those are the cats. And then we have one more subfamily, which are very large cats. And if you look at those are things like clouded leopards, which actually, since I put this in this slideshow, there's another species of clouded leopard since then. And there's lions, jaguars, leopards, tigers, the marbled cat, which is the smallest member of this subfamily, and the snow leopard. And so these are the big cats in a different subfamily. So classifications which make sense to one taxonomist may not to another. Sometimes very different classification schemes exist, each one based on something we can determine, we can detect, we can observe. And so let's look at some examples from the cat family. So these two cats have very similar patterns, but they are actually in different genera, different subfamilies. And so if you were just going by the pattern on the spots, you could classify them very closely together, but they are very far apart in the cat taxonomy. These two cats look very different, but they're actually the same species. These two cats, again, look very different, but they're classified in the same genus. So what the taxonomists were going for here, I think, is size. And so the jaguar and the tiger are both very large, and they're put together in the same genus. The tiger, though, is the largest of all cats. And if you're not sure how big a tiger is, that hybrid will give you an idea. This is a hybrid. The word hybrid means two species mixed together. And if two organisms are truly from different species, their offspring will be sterile or infertile, meaning they can't have babies. This is a liger and a tigon. These are crosses between tigers and lions, and they're actually fertile, which tells us that genetically speaking, from a biological perspective, tigers and lions are actually the same species. I wouldn't recommend hugging a cat that size like that, and one of those two guys was almost eaten on stage in Las Vegas. They don't do that anymore. Good. And here's one more hybrid just for fun. This is a leopard-lion cross. These were very common in the pharaoh's courts of ancient Egypt. And so families then are organized into the next level up. The next taxon is called an order. So all of the meat eaters like cats are in order Carnivora. We'll find dogs here and some other things. And then the orders are organized into classes. All of the cats are in class Mammalia. We're in class Mammalia. A mammal is something that feeds milk to its babies. You might be confused and think it's something that has live birth, but not all mammals have live birth. Some of them lay eggs. And the key categorization there is that it has mammary glands that produce milk, and so the babies drink milk. And then the classes are organized into a phylum, and we are in phylum Chordata with the cats because once you're placed into a taxon with another organism, you're left in there. As you go up, you're divided down toward the species level and grouped together going the other way. So we're in phylum Chordata. That's everything that has a hard notochord that protects a central nerve structure, like our backbone and spinal cord. And then the broadest that we're going to talk about in the video and in the book, there's another level above this, and you'll get to that. But the broadest we're going to talk about is the kingdom Animalia. That's what we are, and we'll talk about what it means to be an animal in just a bit. And so in mnemonic for this, King Philip can only find good subjects, or you did something else in 7th grade, I would imagine. So taxonomy is dynamic, which means it's ever-changing. The word dynamic means changeable. And so the original system that Linnaeus had two kingdoms. Actually, there was a third kingdom, the minerals. He classified rocks too, but we're just talking about the life forms, so animals and plants. And then eventually, after Leeuwenhoek discovered the wee beasties and other people realized what they were, we developed a third kingdom for microscopic organisms. And then later, better microscopes, people realized that eukaryotes and prokaryotes exist in the microorganisms, and that'll be a question on the Edpuzzle video. The Amoeba Sisters won dichotomous key, so make sure you understand the difference of eukaryote and prokaryote, nucleus or not. And then eventually, not that long ago, about 40 years ago, people are like, wait, mushrooms don't make their own food. They're not green. They aren't autotrophs, so we should give them their own kingdom. And so that 5-kingdom system, which started being used in the late 1960s, is still popular with many researchers. It contains animals, plants, fungus, protists, and Monera are the bacteria. And so modern biologists have several competing themes. Our book has 6. And the most different system divides the archaebacteria, or just archae, into one group and everything else into something else. And so remember, classification is done for convenience. Everything above the species level is fake, it's false, it's not real. The standard character is arbitrary. And so we look for easily discernible differences that make good dividing characters, for example, cell types, or whether they make their own food or not, multicellular or unicellular, those kinds of things. So let's quickly go through the 6-kingdom system in the book. So the eubacteria, the true bacteria, remember EU means true. These are the normal bacteria that you would encounter on everyday life that would make you sick. These are prokaryotes with or without cell walls, and they're unicellular. The archaebacteria, you would have to go on a field trip to visit. There's a few bizarre types. They don't make you sick. They don't live on your food. They're not in your house. Protist, which means first. These are the simple, often unicellular eukaryotes, either heterotrophs or autotrophs. They have walls or they don't. This is pretty much the trash can kingdom of the eukaryotes. If we don't know where to put it, we dump it in here. Fungus, these are all heterotrophs. They have walls, and they're usually, well, I shouldn't say usually. They can be either uni or multicellular. Yeasts and many other fungus are unicellular, and multicellular ones, like the mushrooms we eat, are very common as well. And then the plants, here's an example of some groups of plants. These are multicellular, sometimes unicellular, have walls, and they're autotrophs. Animals, no walls, heterotrophs, multicellular. That's an animal. And so here's a quick history of the way things have been divided up. And so you can see there in 1866, we gave the microscopic organisms their own kingdom, and so on and so forth. And so just remember that a genus contains multiple species, and so on and so forth. And so phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, these are the things that make up a kingdom. A couple keystone statements there, you can read those. And so remember that species is the only thing that actually is testable in nature. All of the rest are just things that we determine based on a characteristic we look for, and we place things in groups. And this is a simple way to organize all of the life on the planet, except it's not very simple, and lots of people spend lots of time on it, but hopefully it gives you a good idea.